Hi, I'm retired NYPD Detective Vic Ferrari, and welcome to NYPD Through the Looking Glass podcast, where you get unique insight into the New York City Police Department. Before we get started, I encourage you to check out my Amazon author page, where you'll find my series of behind-the-scenes NYPD books. They're $10 paperback or $2.99 ebook download, including my latest NYPD Presumption and Dysfunction. Hope everyone's having a great week. Before we get to this week's story, let's go to the true crime section of the New York Post. FBI raid of New York City's Diamond District leads to 2 arrests as nationwide pro-athlete burglaries probed, with one suspect linked to the robbery of NFL star Joe Burrow. A pair of suspected crooks tied to a South America theft crew were arrested by the FBI in Manhattan's Diamond District on Tuesday. One of the suspects is linked to the December robbery at NFL quarterback Joe Burrow's home in Ohio. Dmitry Zhechensky and Juan Villar are accused of running a midtown pawn shop where pricey stolen goods like high-end handbags, watches, jewelry, sports memorabilia were peddled. The loot was allegedly stashed at a shop and a New Jersey storage unit. Yeah, that figures. The defendants created an illicit market and fueled demand for burglaries by South American theft groups and other crews around the country by purchasing stolen watches, jewelry, and other luxury items and then reselling them through the New York City store. Zhechensky, a Georgian national from North Bergen, New Jersey, who goes by the nickname Russo, he wants to be Italian, and U.S.-born Villar of Queens, 48 years old, were linked to at least 5 high-end robberies dating back to 2020, feds say. Agents then executed a search warrant at Zhechensky's storage unit in New Jersey and found large quantities of luxury goods and clothing, including high-end handbags, wine, sports memorabilia, jewelry, and art. Both men have ties to Brian Leonardo Herrera Maldonado, 4 names, described by federal prosecutors as a prolific burglar who committed at least 16 residential burglaries across the U.S. in 2019 and 2020. It's funny, right? All things lead back to New Jersey. The Diamond, for those of you that don't know, the Diamond District in Midtown Manhattan, you're talking about millions and millions and millions of dollars that trade hands every day. You have the Hasidic Jewish community that owns a lot of these diamond shops down there. It's probably the most security conscious place in New York City. And I mean, New York now has cameras everywhere, but the Diamond District always had cameras. If you commit a crime there, or if the feds are looking at you and they can get access to your cameras, you're done. Just a couple of years ago, there was a security company offloading, I think it was gold coins, and some opportunist, wasn't a professional thief, he was a South American guy, saw the guard at his back turn and picked up a bucket, or it was a satchel, and it was like a couple of $1 million worth of gold coins. But eventually they caught the guy. So you're not going to get away with anything. These guys thought it would be smart to set up a pawn shop right there. Not a good idea. And listen, you're going to do high-end burglaries. All these things people are going to know are missing. It's not like you're stealing bearer bonds or cash or coins or something. Just stupid, but they got caught. This story is kind of near and dear to my heart. Killer who executed NYPD cop over a pair of trendy sunglasses released from prison, sparking outrage. A cop killer who shot an NYPD officer to death over a pair of sunglasses was released from prison Tuesday, devastating the officer's family. Police officer Juan Andino was killed June 15, 1984, after he stopped Lee Ernest Walker to question him over the theft of a pair of $140 Cazal specs from a display case in a South Bronx store. Walker, now 67 years old, was released from parole from Sing Sing Correctional Facility in Ossining after spending 40 years behind bars for first-degree murder, according to State Department correction records. Walker is the 43rd cop killer paroled since 2017, when the rules governing how the 16-member state parole board weighs a prisoner's release were revised, in part because of lobbying by left-wing reformers. The board gives more weight to an inmate's age and record while in prison and less to the savagery of the crime committed, the source said. Here we go again, New York State's parole board. They are literally thumbing their nose at law enforcement. Juan Andino was killed 2 weeks after I graduated from high school. I remember it because that was around the time I wanted to become a New York City cop. So anything with the police, I was reading the newspapers. My first precinct assigned out of the academy, out of field training, I went to the 4-2. Right down the block, about a mile or two away, is the 4-0. Later on, when I was in Bronx Task Force and auto crime and I was making arrests, I made a decent amount of arrests in the 4-0. I remember seeing Officer Andino's plaque on the wall. I read his story numerous times. It's just New York State Parole Board just doesn't care. And you've got these lunatics in there, and until people start writing letters, it's just not going to stop. It's a shame. And Cuomo started this nonsense. And now Andrew Cuomo wants to run for mayor. So he screwed up New York State, and now he wants to run for mayor. It's a clown show. This is actually pretty funny. A Florida woman caught on camera hurling commemorative first date brick through ex-husband's window despite denials. The woman was caught on camera chucking a commemorative first date brick to her ex-husband's window last month, even as she repeatedly denied carrying out the vengeful act, according to police. Sabrina Coyne was arrested around 11 p.m. on January 24th when Lee County Sheriff's deputies confronted her in front of her ex's Bonita Springs home. When law enforcement reached the scene, one deputy asked Coyne, who was wearing a short dress and high heels, why she was banging on the front door. The brick appeared to memorialize the couple's first date in January 2020 when they went jet skiing together. How nice, according to a photo of the brick provided by the sheriff's office on its social media page. Coyne is facing departmental charges of criminal mischief for throwing a deadly missile into an occupied dwelling, the sheriff's office said. A lot to unpack here. So in Florida, the rules are totally different. If you throw something at somebody, like somebody pisses you off and you throw a soda can at someone's car, it's a crime. It's called throwing a missile, and it can be anything. I saw the photo, and it's like, remember back in the day when you went on vacation to Florida, you could buy a can of sunshine and give it away as a gift, or the invisible dog. It was a stiff leash that you could walk around. This brick, actually, it says commemorative first day brick, and I don't know, who knows what he did or what she perceived he did, but she went up to the house and chucked the brick through the window, and now she's going to have to spend a night in the pokey. An ingenious Idaho man used a homemade barcode inscribed ring at Walmart's self-checkout to pay for the price of a can of soup for pricey goods, according to authorities. Dylan Rockwell, 32 years old, allegedly admitted to ripping off the store on several occasions and was caught after ringing up the price of a can of soup for a $300 grill at Walmart, according to a statement from the Caldwell Police Department. The clever alleged thief used the makeshift ring, which was inscribed with the cheap barcode, to wave over the reader when left unattended at the self-checkout line. Officers responded to the Idaho Walmart on February 2nd after reports of a theft in progress and tracked Rockwell back to his home about 25 miles from the state capital, Boise, according to the Post. While questioned by the police, Rockwell allegedly copped to pulling the hand-waving scam at the Walmart on several occasions. The 32-year-old is being charged with felony burglary. Now, I found that interesting that they charged him with burglary, but I know in New York and Florida, they'll never do it. But a burglary, as per the letter of the law, is enter or remain in a dwelling with the intent to commit a crime therein. So technically, if you want to use the letter of the law, if you go into a shopping store, a Walmart, and steal something, you're going in with the intent to remove something that's not yours. They can charge you with a burglary for that. You know, these corporations, I don't feel sorry for them because now they're doing everything automated, and nowadays you go to a store like Aldi or Walmart, there's a line going around the corner for people looking to get a cashier, and they're like, but no, you can use this and just check out yourself. People must be ripping them off like crazy, but I guess it's cost effective for them that they don't have to pay somebody standing there. Another thing with burglary, for those of you that live down here in Florida, a vehicle is considered a dwelling. So let's say, and I'm not advocating this at all, I'm just explaining the law as I know it down here in Florida, because this opened my eyes when I was a cop down here. If you're sitting in your car and someone comes over and punches you in the face while you're sitting in your car or bitch slaps you, that's a burglary. Because you're sitting in your dwelling, a car, and someone slaps you in the face or punches you, it's almost like a home invasion. So don't jump up and down on me. I didn't write the law, but that's the statute as it's written and enforced down here in Florida. This story is so bizarre, I don't even know where to begin. A Florida teenager who stabbed his mother to death was acquitted after he argued it was self-defense, nearly 2 years after he was accused of shooting his father. Colin Griffith, 17 years old, was found not guilty Wednesday of murdering his mom, Kathy Griffin, who was fatally stabbed in the neck at his grandmother's home in Polk County in September. Colin told police that she lunged at him with a knife. Colin told police that she lunged at him with a knife and fell on it. But a medical examiner ruled that Catherine's wounds could not have been caused accidentally, and he was arrested and charged with murder and kidnapping. Witnesses told detectives that before the stabbing, Colin and his mother had been shouting at each other outside the residence and saw the boy grab his mom by the hair and drag her inside as she repeatedly pleaded, "Let me go." Colin also fatally shot his father, Charles Robert Griffin, in Lincoln County. Colin also fatally shot his father, Charles Robert Griffin, in their Lincoln County, Oklahoma home on February 14, 2023. The then 15-year-old told police that his father had cornered him in the house in an act of self-defense, and he shot him once in the chest and once in the head. No one else was home at the time. He was charged with murder, but the state charge was dropped less than a month later by the Attorney General after Oklahoma authorities could not find evidence that disputed Colin's claim of self-defense. I'm going to take a wild guess here and see that they might reopen that case and take a look at it. Listen, he was found not guilty. But what's the odds of someone whacks two parents 2 years apart? I don't think, if you were his uncle or cousin, would you take this kid in? Just a crazy story. So anyway, I was trying to figure out, after last week I did 2 episodes, I was trying to figure out what kind of stories to tell. So I think I've gone on about working in the Riverdale section of the Bronx. You have an affluent area up there. And some of the people up there believe that Riverdale is not really part of the Bronx. And I don't know how they did it, but I remember, like, you pull somebody over up in Riverdale and they'd hand you their driver's license and it would say, like, 3215 Johnson Avenue, Riverdale, New York. And I'm like, it's the Bronx. Like, I grew up in Throgs Neck. A driver's license doesn't say Throgs Neck or Pelham Bay or Woodlawn or Bainbridge. So somehow, some way, they got Riverdale put on their driver's license. And the people up there, you had a lot of famous people with money at one time lived up there and came from there. And there's a couple of schools up there. There's a primary school, there's a high school, I think there's a middle school up there, and it's tucked away up in Riverdale. And a lot of famous people sent their kids there. A lot of people from Wall Street's kids go there. Chevy Chase went to one of these schools when he was a young kid. Carly Simon went to one of these schools. There's several of them. I'm not just pointing one out, but there's a handful of them up there. And there's a hubris with these schools. I mean, I'm sure they're all private schools. Basically, they're training grounds for the Ivy Leagues. People pay big money to send their kids there. But the administration there used to get it in their head that the school was sovereign land and that the rules and New York State penal law didn't apply to them. So I got a couple of stories about dealing with these schools early in my career. So it's the early 90s. I came from the South Bronx. Now I'm working in Riverdale. A lot different. And the first time I get called to one of these schools, it's a bomb threat. And it was first thing in the morning. It was like 9 o'clock in the morning. It's a bomb threat. So myself and my partner pull up to the school, and the administrator, the principal, she comes running out, and she looked like Fran Drescher from The Nanny, with like that jet dyed black hair and the nasally voice and bright clothing, a little too tight for her age. And she's going on and on and on about this explosive device. And I go, where is it? And, first, before she tells me about the explosive device, she hands me like 4 or 5 sheets of legal paper that's like from the bomber. And it's this rambling. I mean, we call it in the NYPD when someone's nuts, we call them an EDP, an emotionally disturbed person. It's just a rambling thing. And I says, okay, well, where's the device? She goes, well, I had the security guard move it out to the schoolyard. I go, what? You moved it? She goes, well, I don't want it going off in my office. So I'm like, all right. So we make our way out of the schoolyard. The security guard is this like 70-something-year-old man. He's wearing like a Parker coat with like a patch from the school on it. And he's out of breath. And you can see like he's friggin' traumatized. And I go, hey, Pop, where is this thing? And he goes, I put it on the bleachers. I said, okay, good. So I get on the radio. The sergeant's asking questions. I tell the sergeant what's going on. And yeah, we should really get the bomb squad here. And okay, so now things are in motion. And I'm reading this letter. And again, it makes no sense. And I said, I wonder who wrote this. She goes, oh, I know who wrote it. It's a parent here. I said, what? So basically, she explains to me that one of their students' mother has been a real pain in the ass over the years. The kid still attends the school, and the mother supposedly left a bomb here. I says, okay. So Sergeant shows up. He's interviewing her. He's looking at me like she's crazy. The security guard's out of breath. Here comes the bomb squad. Bomb squad arrives, a couple of detectives, a supervisor, I think emergency service shows up. I mean, it's a thing, man. And I'm saying to myself, why didn't she evacuate the school instead of moving this thing? But whatever. So the bomb squad guy puts on his anteater costume, goes out there. And I mean, the bomb squad, I mean, those guys are probably 95% of the time when they get called to something, it's nonsense. But this is when they earn their pay. And the guy went out there. He's going really slow. He looks like he's walking on the surface of the moon. And he gets up to this thing, and it was a little cardboard box. And we're watching him. He's looking at it. I don't know if they didn't think to use it or they didn't have that robot with the claw. Again, this is the early, I think it was like 90, 91. He opens up the box, and he's holding up a Barbie doll with a couple of sheets of toilet paper. So I start laughing, right? So it's bullshit. He takes the anteater thing off, and he picks up the box, and he starts walking over, right? So I've got this rambling note that the administrator handed me. And I says, okay. And the detectives were on their way. I mean, I'm just a cop. And I says, all right, I'm going to need this woman's contact information. We're going to have to talk to her. And she goes, well, I don't know if we're interested in pursuing this or pressing charges. I said, lady, this is a big deal. We can't have people going around phoning in bomb threats and leaving suspicious packages. You kind of started this. You wanted a circus. You got a circus, right? I don't know, and blah, blah, blah. So then the sergeant starts talking to the security. Oh, no, the detectives got there. The detectives start talking to the security guard, and now all of a sudden she turns into William Kunstler, attorney at law, and she goes, I don't know if you could talk to him yet. I told you I have to talk to the administrative board or the board of whatever, or someone who's over her. And I go, lady, this is a police investigation. This isn't an option. You have to cooperate. P.S. Everybody, the sergeant goes, all right, everybody gets brought down to the station house. So she goes down to the station house. The security guard goes down to the station house. So finally, after she made some calls or something, and they cooperate. But, I mean, it wasn't like it took some prodding to do. But here's the funny thing, right? After about an hour or so at the station house, she comes up to me and she says, could you give me a ride back to the school? And I said, I'm going to have to confer with my supervisor. I went downstairs and took my meal hour. So about a year later, 2 years later, I'm making a lot of arrests, and I've got my ear to the radio, and it comes over as a robbery 5 minutes in the past at that same school. So my partner and I race up there, and there's 3 teenage boys standing in front of the school. I think they were freshmen, and they go, we just got robbed. And they start giving us the description. So my partner I was driving. My partner opens up the back seat, and they start climbing in. And he's getting the description. I go, which way did they go? And, of course, they're heading towards Broadway. And Fran Drescher comes running out of the school again, right? So I just look up. I see her. And she's like, officer, officer. And I said out loud in front of the kids, I go, oh, not this pain in the ass again. So they start laughing, right? So she runs up to the car. And she says, what are you doing? I says, we got a robbery in progress. Several of your students got robbed. She goes, oh, I made the 911 call. I said, okay. I says, well, all right, we're going to canvass the area. We're going to look for these guys. She goes, you can't take them off school grounds. You're going to need a member of the school faculty. I said, lady, I don't have time for this. I said, you call the police. These kids are a victim of a crime. They're coming with us. No, I got to get the security guard. This is against school policy. So me being me and having worked in the South Bronx, I said, stick your school policy up your ass. And we drove off. Now, the three boys in the back seat thought this was the funniest thing in the world. And they're laughing and like, we can't believe you told off Mrs. Schwartz or whatever her name was. And they're giggling. We're all laughing. I'm having a good laugh. And I'm like, oh, you don't know the half of it. I had to deal with this broad like 2 years ago. So anyway, we go down to Broadway, and over on 242nd Street in Broadway is the last stop of the number 1 and 9 train. And of course, standing just around the not the platform, but the stairs to go up to the train in front of Dorney Malone's bar are 3 teenage boys. And our kids in the back seat, the victims go, that's them, that's them. We jump out, we grab the 3 boys, we pat them down. They had a knife that they used to threaten. I think they had one of the kids' Walkman and a wallet. It was some property, right? But still, I mean, it's teenagers robbing teenagers, but what it was is 3 kids from Washington Heights came uptown and they decided to rob a couple of trust fund babies, and we caught them. So I call another radio car over. They take the bad guys. I take the kids. We go into the station house, right? Patting the kids at I don't remember if they were I don't know if it was juvenile arrests or they were over 16, but I just know it was a big to-do. And I'm in the station house processing the arrest, and I'm letting the kids call their parents to tell them what happened. Who comes into the precinct wanting blood? But the school administrator, and she's bringing the old man security guard again. I'm like, they don't pay this guy enough, right? So she comes in, she comes up to the desk, and she starts like telling the sergeant what I said and kind of enhancing it, and she wants to make a civilian complaint and all this stuff. So the sergeant is trying to squash it, and he's like, well, miss, he's got every right to take those kids. We're the police. You called the police for an armed robbery. He's got the kids. He's not going to do anything with them. He's the police. He's looking to lock these guys up that victimized your students, right? So while this is going on, the precinct had this elderly woman. So there was a local newspaper, and their crime beat reporter was this older woman, and she was like in her late 60s. She smoked, but she was always hanging around the station house. Like 3-4 times a week, you would see her at all hours. Sometimes she was in the morning. The detectives tolerated her because she never really wrote anything negative about the police, but she would always come into the 124 room and try to cozy up to the cops, and she was always looking for a story. And NYPD cops from the womb in the police academy, you're told, don't trust the press, don't talk to them. Anytime the press has a question, defer them to Deputy Commissioner of Public Information. The press is not your friends. And that's basically the way I rolled back then. So she's got her notepad, and she catches wind of what's going on, and now she's hovering over by the desk, kind of listening in to this school principal just bashing the shit out of me for telling her to stick the policy up her ass. So the sergeant turns around and goes, all right, let me talk to you. So he pulls this the security guard and the school principal into the muster room. He's trying to squash it, and the reporter kind of goes and hovers and follows, right? So I go back to wanting to process the arrest. A couple of minutes later, the desk officer comes over to me and he goes, listen, I think I've gotten this taken care of, but you got to apologize. And I go, apologize for what? He goes, listen, I know you came from the South Bronx. This is Riverdale. He goes, if you want this to go away, you don't want to get a civilian complaint, you got to apologize to this woman. He goes, and you owe that reporter a favor. I go, what do I owe the reporter a favor for? He goes, I'll tell you after. Just go apologize. So I went over there, hat in hand, bent the knees, and gouged myself on a large slice of humble pie. I'm sorry. I got caught up in the moment. And she's not letting it go. She's just going on and on and on about how awful I was, but P.S., she's not going to make the complaint. So I went back to the sergeant, and I said, why should I thank the reporter? He goes, because she did you a favor. Go over there. So I went over to the reporter, and I says, hi, I'm Officer Ferrari. The sergeant said I should thank you. And she goes, no, you don't have to thank me. I says, well, what happened? She goes, I listened to the story, and she blatantly said she got involved in the middle of a police investigation, and I asked her for a name, and then I told her I was going to put it in the paper, that she was going to make a civilian complaint about you, but I was also going to write that she shouldn't have gotten involved in a police investigation. She goes, I guess she didn't want her name in the paper, and she backed off. So I said, wow, well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Which that civilian complaint would have hung me up because I was supposed to go into the precinct's anti-crime unit, and you get a complaint and an open investigation. But before you go into any specialized unit in the NYPD, they kind of do like a departmental background investigation. It's called a round robin. And if you have anything pending, even a civilian complaint, it can hold you up. And then they would have given the slot to someone else, and then I wouldn't have gotten in. So I thanked her, and I said, listen, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. She goes, if you ever get like a really good collar, she goes, I'd appreciate it if you tell me about it, talk to me about it. I said, okay, because I used to blow her off like everybody else. So I go into anti-crime, and I'm making robbery collars and stolen car arrests and stuff. So whenever I would see her, I would tell her about the arrest and stuff, and she would put it in the local paper. And, it was kind of like a working relationship from there, which I would have never have imagined in a million years that I'd be talking to the press. So a couple of years later, a year or two later, and it's sad, the woman lived alone. I think that reporting job was all she had in life. I don't think she was married. No, she lived alone. And I don't think she had any children. And she liked to smoke. She always had a cigarette hanging out of her mouth. And unfortunately, what happened is she lived up off of 231st Street and Kingsbridge Road. I think maybe on Godwin Terrace or something. But anyway, she fell asleep with a cigarette in her hand in a chair, and unfortunately she burned to death, and the fire department came, and a couple of my colleagues were on that job, and I felt bad. I mean, she was a nice old lady, and she had a job to do, and that reporting job was her whole life, and unfortunately, she fell asleep with that cigarette in her hand, and it cost her life. The other entitled story I have about Riverdale is early 90s again. We're on Johnson Avenue, my partner and I was working with a female at the time. We get called to a dispute. So we pull up, it's a dry cleaner. And we pull up, and inside the dry cleaner, I see two women behind a counter. And I think it was Koreans that owned the place. And there's like a brawl in the store of like these what looked like two middle-aged women and a couple of the Korean people that worked in the store. So I get in there, and I separate them, cut the bullshit out, enough with the screaming. And what it is you had an older woman. It was a mother and a daughter. The mother was like in her late 60s. She's going through a divorce. The husband was smart. He took a couple of her furs that he bought her, and he put them in storage at this Korean dry cleaner, and he had the ticket. So I guess, they're starting to separate things and everything, and she realizes that he took her furs and put them in storage. So she went, it sounds like a Seinfeld episode. She went to the dry cleaners, and she wants her furs, and they're like, no ticket, no furs. So she went behind the counter and starts pulling shit apart, trying to look for her furs, which is ridiculous because she never would have found it. And then the daughter got involved. So the Koreans really don't want to press charges. And I'm just starting to get this calmed down. And the daughter starts piping up that their father's an evil man, and don't you understand, and why can't I see it their way? And I says, listen, this is between your mother and the store owners. Get outside. Step outside. I don't need you in my ear. It's between your mother and them, and you might be getting locked up for trespass. So just wait outside, right? The daughter gets pissed off. She goes outside the dry clean on Johnson Avenue. And while I'm trying to squash this and find out what the dry cleaners want to do, she starts banging on the plate glass window, and the whole window comes down. Just explodes. And she's standing there with an oh shit look on her face, and it was dead of winter. And I looked at the dry cleaner guy. I go, do you want her arrested? He goes, yeah. Me and my partner come outside. This woman takes off in high heels. We chase her across the street, throw her in cuffs. No, you can't do it. I live in Riverdale. You can't arrest me. Yeah, we are. Throw her in the radio car. And it was the weekend. It was a Friday. It was a Friday night. And those of you cops know in the Bronx, you get locked up on Friday. You're not seeing the judge till Sunday or Monday. And you'll probably get lodged in like the 4-6 overnight somewhere. So what winds up happening is we bring her into the station house. I charge her with criminal mischief and I think trespass. The mother didn't get arrested, who started this whole nonsense. And we put the daughter through the system. And the funniest thing is the mother is at the station house demanding that the desk officer get her a police car to take her home up in Riverdale, which we didn't do. So that's my stories for this week. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, especially my listeners in Newark, New Jersey, Calgary, Alberta, Elmont, New York, Shawnee, Kansas, Lakeland, Florida, home to the great Grady Judd, Irvine, California, and Mamaroneck, New York, home to Matt Dillon. If you work in law enforcement or have an interesting criminal background, please drop me a note on Twitter or Instagram and we'll talk. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the like and subscribe button. If you enjoy the content, please check out my Amazon author page where you'll find my series of behind-the-scenes NYPD books. Just go into Amazon, type in my name, Vic, for I Like the Car, where you can preview all my books for free, including NYPD, Presumption and Dysfunction. I think I've got another really cool guest that I'm able to book next week. And thank you again. I really appreciate the support for you guys watching and your kind words. And I'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks.